Hey there, so we're here for Odd Thomas chapter 52. When we left Odd, he had just gone to his dad's house, had a conversation with his dad, such as it was, and I think he might be heading to his mom's house. So here we go, chapter 52. My mother lives in a lovely Victorian house in the historical district of Picomundo. My father had inherited it from his parents. In the divorce, she received this gracious residence, its contents, and substantial alimony with a cost of living adjustment. Because she has never remarried and most likely never will, her alimony will be a lifetime benefit. Generosity is not my father's first or second or last impulse. He settled a comfortable lifestyle on her solely because he feared her. Although he resented having to share his monthly income from the trust, he didn't have the courage even to negotiate with her through attorneys. She received pretty much everything that she demanded. He paid for his safety and for a new chance at happiness, as he defines it, and he left me behind when I was 1 year old. Before I rang the doorbell, I brushed my hand across the porch swing to confirm that it was clean. She could sit on the swing, and I would sit on the porch railing while we talked. We mate always in the open air. I had promised myself that I would never enter that house again, even if I should outlive her. After I'd rung the bell twice without a response, I went around the house to the backyard. The property is deep. A pair of immense California live oaks stand immediately behind the house, together casting shade that is all but complete. Further toward the back of the lot, sun falls unfiltered, allowing a rose garden. My mother was at work among the roses. Like a lady of another era, she wore a yellow sundress and a matching sunbonnet. Although the wide brim of the hat shaded her face, I could see that her exceptional beauty had not been tarnished during the 4 months since I had last visited her. She had married my father when she was 19 and he was 24. She is 40 now, but she might pass for 30. Photographs taken on her wedding day reveal a 19-year-old who looked 16, breathtakingly lovely, shockingly tender to be a bride. None of my father's subsequent conquests have matched her beauty. Even now, when she is 40, if she were in a room with Brittany, she in her sundress and Brittany in that thong bikini, most men would be drawn to her first. And if she were in a mood to rule the moment, she would enchant them such that they would think she was the only woman among them. I drew near to her before she realized that she was no longer alone. She raised her attention from the flowers, stood taller, and for a moment blinked at me as though I were a heat mirage. Then, "Odd, you sweet boy, you must have been a cat in another life to sneak across all that yard." I could summon only the ghost of a smile. "Hello, Mom, you look wonderful." She requires compliments, but in fact, she never looks less than wonderful. If she had been a stranger, I might have found her to be even lovelier. For me, our shared history diminishes her radiance. "Come here, sweetie. Look at these fabulous blooms." I entered the gallery of roses, where a carpet of decomposed granite held down the dust and crunched underfoot. Some flowers offered sun-prickled petals of blood in bursting sprays. Others were bowls of orange fire, bright cups of yellow onyx brimming with summer sunshine. Pink, purple, peach, the garden was perpetually decorated for a party. My mother kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were not cold, as I always expect them to be. Naming the variety, she said, "This is the John F. Kennedy rose. Isn't it exquisite?" With one hand, she gently lifted a mature bloom so heavy that its head was bowed on its bent stem. As Mojave white as sun-bleached bone, with a faint undertone of green, these large petals weren't delicate, but remarkably thick and smooth. "They look as if they're molded from wax," I said. "Exactly. They're perfection, aren't they, dear? I love all my roses, but these more than any other." Not merely because this rose was her favorite, I liked it less than the others. Its perfection struck me as artificial. The sensuous folds of its labial petals promised mystery and satisfaction in its hidden center. But this seemed to be a false promise, for its wintry whiteness and waxy rigidity, and lack of fragrance, suggested neither purity nor passion, but death. "This one's for you," she said, withdrawing a small pair of rose snips from a pocket of her sundress. "No, don't cut it. Let it grow. It'll be wasted on me." "Nonsense. You must give it to that girl of yours. If properly presented, a single rose can express a suitor's feelings more clearly than a bouquet." She sniffed off 8 inches of stem with the bloom. I held the flower not far below its receptacle, pinching the stem with thumb and forefinger between the highest pair of thorns. Glancing at my wristwatch, I saw that the lulling sun and the perfumed flowers only made time seem to pass lazily, when in fact it raced away. Robertson's kill buddy might even now be driving to his rendezvous with infamy. Moving along the rosarium with a queenly grace and a smile of royal beneficence, admiring the nodding heads of her colorful subjects, my mother said, "I'm so glad you came to visit, dear. What's the occasion?" At her side, yet half a step behind her, I said, "I don't know exactly. I've got this problem." "We allow no problems here," she said, in a note of gentle remonstration. "From the front walk to the back fence, this house and its grounds are a worry-free zone." Aware of the risks, I had nonetheless led us into dangerous territory. The decomposed granite under my feet might as well have been sucking quicksand. I didn't know how to proceed. I didn't have time to play our game by her rules. "There's something I need to remember, or something I should do," I told her, "but I'm blocked on it. Intuition brought me here because I think somehow you can help me figure out what I've overlooked." To her, my words could have been barely more comprehensible than gibberish. Like my father, she knows nothing of my supernatural gift. As a young child, I had realized that if I complicated her life with the truth of my condition, the strain of this knowledge would be the death of her, or the death of me. Always she has sought a life utterly without stress, without contention. She acknowledges no duty to another, no responsibility for anyone but herself. She would never call this selfishness. To her it's self-defense, for she finds the world enormously more demanding than she is able to tolerate. If she fully embraced life with all its conflicts, she would suffer a breakdown. Consequently, she manages the world with all the cold calculation of a ruthless autocrat, and preserves her precarious sanity by spinning around herself a cocoon of indifference. "Maybe if we could just talk for a while," I said. "Maybe then I could figure out why I came here, why I thought you could help me." Her mood can shift in an instant. The Lady of the Roses was too frail to handle this challenge, and that sunny persona retreated to make way for an angry goddess. My mother regarded me with pinched eyes, her lips compressed and bloodless, as if with only a fierce look she could send me away. In ordinary circumstances, that look alone would indeed have dispatched me. A sun of nuclear ferocity rose toward its apex, however, rapidly bringing us nearer to the hour of the gun. I dared not return to the hot streets of Picomundo without a name or a purpose that would focus my psychic magnetism. When she realized that I would not immediately leave her to the comfort of her roses, she spoke in a voice as cold and brittle as ice. "He was shot in the head, you know." This statement mystified me, yet it seemed to have an uncanny connection to the approaching atrocity that I hoped to prevent. "Who?" I asked. "John F. Kennedy." She indicated the namesake Rose. "They shot him in the head and blew his brains out." "Mother," I said, though I seldom used the word in conversation with her, "this is different. You've got to help me this time. People will die if you don't." Perhaps that was the worst thing that I could have said. She didn't possess the emotional capacity to assume responsibility for the lives of others. She seized the rose that she had cut for me, gripped it by the bloom, and tore it out of my hand. Because I failed to release the rose quickly enough, the stem ripped between my fingers, and a thorn pierced the pad of my thumb, broke off in the flesh. She crushed the bloom and threw it on the ground. She turned away from me and strode toward the house. I would not relent. I caught up with her, moved at her side, pleading for a few minutes of conversation that might clarify my thoughts and help me understand why I had come here, of all places, at this mortal hour. She hurried, and I hurried with her. By the time she reached the steps to the back porch, she had broken into a run, the skirt of her sundress rustling like wings, one hand on her bonnet to hold it on her head. The screen door slammed behind her as she disappeared into the house. I stopped on the porch, reluctant to go further. Although I regretted the need to harass her, I felt harassed myself and desperate. Calling to her through the screen, I said, "I'm not going away. I can't this time. I have nowhere to go." She didn't answer me. Beyond the screen door, a curtained kitchen lay in shadows, too still to be harboring my tormented mother. She'd gone deeper into the house. "I'll be here on the porch," I shouted. "I'll be waiting right here all day if I have to." Heart hammering, I sat on the porch floor, my feet on the top step, facing away from the kitchen door. Later, I would realize that I must have come to her house with the subconscious intention of triggering precisely this response and driving her quickly to her ultimate defense against responsibility, the gun. At that moment, however, confusion was my companion, and clarity seemed far beyond my reach. All right, that was chapter 52. See you next time.